With the UW Health say the air quality is so poor right now that everyone should take precautions and limit time outdoors. Jeff Alexander has their advice on this First Alert Weather Day.
The quality of the air we're breathing in northeast Wisconsin right now is reaching unprecedented levels, according to Chief Meteorologist Steve Balon.
I can't remember a time when the air quality index has been as high as it is.
And that's prompting doctors to advise everyone to limit their time outdoors.
This not only affects the vulnerable populations that we think of, but can really affect all people if you have prolonged exposure. And of course, during the summer is when people want to be outdoors and people work outdoors, and it's not the time when you want to be indoors, but that may be the best thing for your health right now.
UW Health allergist Dr. Mark Moss says normally air quality advisories are really meant for the elderly, young children, and those with health conditions like heart or lung disease. But right now, the air is so unhealthy, prolonged exposure could lead to serious consequences.
It can cause inflammation that can cause damage to the airways, some of which may not be reversible. So the short answer to that question is that yes, people can have some permanent changes. The best thing to do is try and limit your exposure to the trigger.
If outdoors for a lengthy time, Dr. Moss says wearing a mask can be beneficial. Unfortunately, unhealthy, smoky air is something we could be dealing with all summer long.
Usually the peak fire season is in the middle of summer. Well, we just started summer, right? It was just started last week. So it's very feasible that the Canadian wildfire season is going to continue for the next few months. And that's going to leave us with just more smoky stretches. It wouldn't be surprising to me if we're dealing with all this smoke until maybe the beginning of autumn.
Jeff Alexander, Action 2 News, Green Bay.